everyone. This is Bob Horowitz, and I thoroughly approve and endorse the March of Remembrance, Texas. I do it so that I underwrite a scholarship in my parents' honor so that the young adults of today will never forget what took place in Europe during World War II. We lost 6 million, 7 million adults. Way too many. And in the face of today's coronavirus, where we're losing Americans, we will survive. We will all overcome this. Now, stay tuned for an important program you will thoroughly enjoy.
Holocaust Remembrance Association presents Hope in Hazardous Times. We're raising our voices against the ever-mutating virus of anti-Semitism for the healing of the world. Tikkun Olam. Hope in Hazardous Times. For such a time as this. Holocaust Remembrance Association sensitizes hearts to the issues of the Holocaust. Yearly marches of remembrance, university scholarships, and the Holocaust Garden of Hope in Kingwood, Texas, are planting seeds of righteousness and raising awareness of the perils of being silent in the presence of social injustice. Remorseful descendants of German Nazi perpetrators organized the first marches in Europe, expanding to over 400 events worldwide and counting. Marches of Remembrance mobilize our world to remember the Holocaust by giving survivors and their descendants a voice to facilitate reconciliation between victims, perpetrators, and their descendants, and to take a stand for Israel and against modern anti-Semitism. For details, see hra18.org. That's hra18.org. Hope in the face of total loss.
Hello, I'm Mitchell Jerome. I'm one of the founders and on the board of the Holocaust Remembrance Association. You're about to engage a timely series, Hope in Hazardous Times. As we are filming, the world is in perilous times, so precarious that every single aspect of our lives has been interrupted, and it happened so suddenly. Forced from working, travel restrictions, group gatherings banned. This isn't about countries warring after one another or one people group infringing on another. Quite the opposite. Countries are pulling together to help, support, and advise each other. The common enemy is ravaging all nations, no respecter of culture, race, or religion. The enemy is COVID-19. We're going to go back about 80 years and interview Holocaust survivors and others who study those times, asking if there's any similarity in the times now with the government almost making martial law control of the land. But today it's for our safety. Back then it was for evil intent. For some, it's like a post-traumatic reflex going on in their lives, all from an invisible enemy, COVID-19. You'll meet amazing people that had to overcome traumas of great significance. Holocaust survivors that went through living hell, some forced into isolation. Are you living in a city that is in lockdown right now? Can't go outside of your home? Is that hard for you to handle? You meet others that have faced serious medical crises because they were subjected involuntarily as objects enduring medical experiments. Some saw their monies vanish, financial ruin. Maybe you're concerned today as the markets are collapsing around us. Some faced hurts from humiliation. Today, the angst of COVID-19 has people screaming at one another at grocery lines for not social distancing. Compare that to the humiliation of a Holocaust survivor who had his identity reduced to but a number tattooed on his arm. Some experienced a total loss. In a single day, all they had was gone. No matter what the crises, these people had hope. Perhaps faint at best, but a glimmer of hope can go a long way in a situation of desperation. Stay tuned. Share this link with your friends. You're going to meet these extraordinary people, rabbis, pastors, consul generals of different nations, survivors, and more.
Shalom to all the organizers and the people who take part in the March of Remembrance 2020. These days are days of total loss. People are despaired, people are afraid, and people feel that they are losing their ability to get along in this world. This takes me back to the Holocaust 75 years ago. Those days, those dark days, the Jewish people felt the same thing. They felt that they had no dignity, they felt that they were losing their lives, their families, but they overcome. And today, as a grandson of a Holocaust survivor, I can say proudly that we overcame those days. We will overcome these days. The total loss that we feel are feelings that will eventually fade away. And the most important thing is for us is hope, to hope in our future, in ourselves and in our families.
Israel, Volk Gottes, erwählt und doch verstoßen. Die ganze Welt hasst dich und das ist noch der Lohn, denn du hast alles Leid gesehen. Und der Neid der vielen kostete Millionen von Seelen, der einst Geliebten. Doch schäme dich nicht deiner Schönheit, denn du sollst leben. Einer nahm das Land von den Feinden und hat es dir gegeben. Trotz Genozid und Holocaust bist du auferstanden von toten Gebeinen, hochgeholt und verwandelt. Jetzt bist du wieder an deinem rechten Platz als Licht in dieser durchkämpften Nacht. Wieder ist es finster in der Welt, doch solange du atmest, scheint dein Licht, das uns erhält. Ja, du bist wahrhaftig die Hoffnung der Nationen und für das, was du hast, wird dich jedes Land noch loben. Segen auf Israel und Frieden für die Nachbarn. Er hat dich auserwählt, mit ihm ist alles machbar.
שנות אלפיים להיות המושי בארצנו ארץ ציון Jerusalem.
Solange die kostbare Mauer vor dem Auge erscheint und über die Zerstörung des Tempels sein Jude Tränen weint, solange das Wasser in Fülle im Jordan fließt und du der Erinnerung gedenkst und nach vorne siehst, solange eine jüdische Seele in deinem Herzen wohnt, Augen nach Zion gerichtet, das auf dem Berge thront, solang gibt es Hoffnung seit 2000 Jahren, ein freies Volk in seinem Land, Zion, Jerusalem. Kehre heim, Israel, weil du dann Frieden hast. Dein Arzt wohnt in Jerusalem und Balsam ist in Gilead. Dein Arzt ist Gott, er ist Heilung und die Antwort. Der Gott von Abraham, Isaak und Jakob. Geliebtes Israel, vertraue ganz auf ihn. Er schlägt die Feinde in die Flucht und gibt dann den Sieg. Der Bund mit seinem Volk besteht immer vor Gott und er hält sein Wort in Ewigkeit und so lang gibt es Hoffnung.
Jerusalem,
Because my parents were Holocaust survivors and I didn't get to meet most of my family in Hungary, most of them were taken to Auschwitz by neighbors. They showed them to the White Arrow Cross who the Jews were. And so I never really got to meet most of my family. So I felt that I would dedicate this little talk that I'm giving to my father. And his name was Chaim Eisenstatter, but he had to change his name because it was too Jewish to Henrik Erdesh. And so that's my mom. We have my grandbaby named after her, Ava. She's over there. Ava, say hi. And I just want, could you show the next picture real quick? These are three of my father's four siblings who were betrayed by their neighbors, Bela, Margit, Joseph, and Sander. Joseph over here, he was hidden. The others were taken to Auschwitz. Can you go to the next one? I'm named after my grandmother Rosa, and who died 1 year before the Nazis arrived in Hungary. Hallelujah, thank you God, right? She didn't have to experience watching her children and her husband be taken to Auschwitz. And the thing is, my father never told me all about this. Could you imagine your own father and all of most of your siblings taken away and murdered, and you don't tell your children? So I just wanted to say that we're going to talk a little bit about this veil of silence that was not just amongst survivors, but also amongst Germans and their families. The March of Remembrance, I just want you to know, is an important fit for Texas A&M due to the selfless service that is already ingrained in this culture. Over 568,000 Hungarian Jews perished during the Holocaust, with over 80,000 that were killed just at the end of the war in Budapest. Many were shot on the banks of the Danube River and their bodies thrown in the river. In addition, many thousands were forced on death marches to the Austrian border. My parents survived because of selfless rescuers who put their lives in danger and hid my parents. And I'm honoring my father, who made sure that my mother was hid in a hospital. It was a fake hospital. It was a front, while he was moving from house to house as Jews were being hunted down. So this march is about encouraging all of you, and for you to pass it on to your families and your friends, to rise up and not be bystanders. Is that okay? It's like in my DNA to help raise up people that were those who helped my family. So this great university will be affected, I pray, even more than it already is. Such a good university, and you are very much involved in selfless service here, I've heard. And I'm thankful that we're here, and that it'll go beyond here and throughout Texas and beyond to other universities. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Simon Wellner. I am the son of Holocaust survivors Henry and Eva Wellner. Most survivors of the Holocaust have an inspiring story to tell about their survival. My parents wanted to tell a story about a legacy they created, and this is how they did it. When Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, became the Führer in 1934, from 1935 to 1944, his birthday, April 20th, was celebrated as a national holiday. My mother and father wanted to make an important statement at around that date. In 1947, my mother purposely gave birth to me, a Jewish male, on April 20th, as their way of getting past Hitler and his terrible final solution. I was born in a displaced persons camp in Bamberg, Germany. Because of my mother's depleted physical state, I also had two other surviving women volunteer to be my wet nurses. I am a child of many mothers. In many ways, I'm a unique second-generation child because of the positive actions my parents took to help restore the Jewish people. They named me Shimon, after my paternal grandfather who did not survive. My middle name is Chaim, as in L'chaim, to life. When life circumstances in the United States allowed, my mother gave birth to my sister Pamela, exactly 13 years later. If one statement was good, two statements of life was even better. For 60 plus years, my family celebrates love and happiness on April 20th. My story as a second-generation survivor is intertwined with the life story of my wife, Carol. Carol was born in Linz, Austria, a displaced persons camp in April 1947. Her parents, Marcus and Paula Last, were also Holocaust survivors. Marcus owes his very life to the liberation of Mauthausen concentration camp in May of 1945 by American soldiers. They literally carried him out on a plank. Eventually, Marcus and Paula ended up in the same DP camp in Linz, Austria, married and created their daughter, Carol. Incredibly, Carol and I were born 400 miles and a few days apart. 4,400 miles, and 16 years later, we finally met. Over time, we realized we shared a history that few could comprehend. It didn't hurt that she was kind, loving, and a beautiful person. Eventually, I got smart enough to marry her, and we now celebrate over 51 years together. With our common background, we realized that we had an obligation to make the world a better place. We actively participate in Jewish organizations, along with a variety of non-Jewish community-based organizations. We accepted our obligation to make sure that anti-Semitic groups and other organizations must be resisted. Community involvement is how we daily try to heal the world. Shalom. Peace.
Shalom, Chaverim. I'm Rabbi Dan Gordon of Temple Beth Torah. Our biggest fears are fears of the unknown. And what's the greatest unknown? But what happens to us when our days are over? Of course, there are many scriptures that can describe in detail what heaven or hell might be like. But of course, none of us really knows. One of my favorite stories is one about a man who was deeply troubled by what might happen to him when his days were done. So troubled that he had dreams about it. And in one dream, he was being given a tour. An angel took him and said, "Here is one of the places you might be." And he showed him a big, grand ballroom with every kind of food you could imagine. The aroma was just delighting his senses. He said, "This must be heaven." But the angel said, "No, I'm afraid not. This is hell." And the man looked at the faces of the people sitting at the table, and he saw they were annoyed. They were aggravated. What was wrong? Well, these people did not have elbows. They had 2 arms with a fork and a spoon attached, but they had no elbows, and they could not bend their arms to feed themselves. And all the food was spread at the table, but it could not come into their mouths, and they were tempted, but they couldn't feed themselves. The man was very disturbed by this. He said, "But is there a heaven?" The angel smiled and nodded and took him into another ballroom. It looked identical to the first. The same kind of food, the same kind of aroma. He said, "Is this the same room?" No. The people's faces were joyous. What was the difference? Perhaps they have elbows, perhaps they can feed themselves. But he looked, and these people had the same kind of affliction. No elbows, straight arms, a fork, and a spoon. But these were those who came to heaven, and they had learned how to feed each other. My friends, all our fears can be satisfied when we learn to feed each other.
So I'm here with Mr. Alexander Pollack of Houston, Texas. Alex was originally born in Yugoslavia. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about your family life before the war, before World War II? What was it like prior to the Holocaust?
We were a middle-class Jewish family living in Yugoslavia and Bosanski Brod on a mobile oil refinery where my father was a chief chemist. We had a good life.
So, I mean, you mentioned in the past, I believe, that your family, I mean, you were with the refinery, you had a very prosperous family.
Yes, very prosperous.
Very well-educated family.
Yeah, of course, my grandfather and my grandmother lived in Romania and Bucharest. We frequently visited them, and it was a good life.
And your grandfather brought the first diesel fuel oil sample to Baytown, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as a result of the Holocaust, of the events, of World War II,
yes.
What did your family lose? What did you lose as an individual?
We lost everything. Hope was lost. Everything is lost. But the incredible belief and the good Lord and the impossible kept me alive. Unfortunately, my parents were not that lucky.
And how old were you when the war ended?
When the war ended, I was 15 years old.
15 years old. And so there was no school for you during the war, was there?
No schooling.
Okay. And so who rescued you, Alex?
Well, the rescue really occurred by Mrs. Yoris, who was a Christian lady living in the refinery, and she took care of us. I lived in an orphanage during the war, and then after the war again, I joined my family in Romania.
And I believe you mentioned that you would receive care packages?
Yes, we received care packages while I was in the concentration camp on the island of Rab. Luckily for us, it was under the supervision of the Italians and not Germans.
Okay. Now, my understanding also is that your rescuer is in Yad Vashem.
Yes,
as a
Mrs.
righteous
Yoris,
of the nations.
I managed finally to install her in Yad Vashem and the Garden of the Righteous.
Right. Now, Alex, you, for someone that had lost absolutely everything, your family, you didn't have the access to education that you normally would, money, property, possessions, everything. Somehow, some way, after World War II, you came to England, correct?
Yes.
And you received an education as an engineer?
Yes.
And then you immigrated to the United States?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, as I said, it was due to the fact that I had a good family, and I had where to take the refuge after the war. And then I was lucky enough to enter one of the best universities in England, Birmingham University. And since then, when I came to the United States in 1966, I built new processes, and those plants are now on the value of several billions of dollars in Chattanooga, Texas.
And so this is, and English was not your first language, correct?
No.
So, and how many languages do you speak?
Well, I speak, of course, English. I understand Hebrew and a bit of Romanian.
Okay. Now, Alex, in the events that we're going through right now with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, the
Yes.
economic chaos, the stock market, etc., a lot of people have lost things. Their whole life has been shaken. What would be your message to them?
Well, let me tell you, when I left, I was in an Italian concentration camp on the island of Rabbi, and I was only a boy of about 13, 14 years old, and I fallen sick with malaria, and that was very serious at my age and so on, and we went to join the partisan forces on the mainland of Croatia. And as a boy, of course, was a struggle, but I never gave up hope.
So you never gave up, like Sir Winston Churchill, never give up, right?
That's right. I never gave up.
Okay. And who would you ascribe your success to?
Well, success as an engineer or success, overall success?
Your life success.
My life success really was only based because of the horrible background, that seeing the darkest hour, and then, having a belief that that cannot continue. Or the worst case scenario could not continue.
Now, Alex is about to celebrate his 50th wedding anniversary to his beautiful wife. He's been a member of the synagogue.
Doris Mary.
From
England.
From England. He's been a member of the United Orthodox Synagogue here in Houston for how many years?
Probably 40, 50.
So, and he was rescued by a Christian lady, a Christian
Yes.
family. And here's a man that never gave up hope and was successful.
Never.
So, never give up hope. Thank you.
Wir leben in einer Zeit, in der wir uns aktiv an den Holocaust erinnern müssen.
We are living at a time when we need to actively remember the Holocaust.
Aber wenn wir nicht wissen, was der Holocaust war, der Tod von 6 Millionen Juden, die Verantwortung von Menschen, die geschwiegen haben, dann können wir nicht Verantwortung für die Zukunft nehmen.
But unless we know what the Holocaust was, the deaths of 6 million people, we will never be able to take responsibility for the future.
Wir erleben, wie der Antisemitismus in einer ungeheuren Art und Weise in Europa und auch in Amerika wieder explodiert.
And we're currently seeing a tremendous explosion of anti-Semitism in America and in Europe again.
Und ich wünsche sehr, dass dieser Park und dieses Gelände dazu dient, gemeinsam zu lernen und die Stimme zu erheben.
And I really wish that this park will serve the purpose for learning together and raising our voices together.
During World War II, I was a young child, 7 years old, and my father and family were dislocated from our home. And as that happened, my father was taken to the Jasenovac camp, which is in Croatia, on the river Sava. And I realized that after doing research with some friends, that this was a location and a duty of our people living here to remember and do something about the remembrance of over 700,000 people, of which there were 20,000 children.
you want to share a little bit about this COVID situation, what it makes you think about with the Holocaust and medical crises?
Well, there's a lot of parallels. Being a historian, when we've talked about different crises throughout time, you've got the plague, and you go through the wars. I think what's coming up right now a lot in World War II was the Spanish flu, and there's estimates today up to 100 million people worldwide perish from that. And this is a bad one, there's no doubt. But I think we'll be just like any other generation. We'll get through this. It's going to be tough. It already is tough. But there are a lot of parallels to the Holocaust. You talk about medical crisis. Today, I think the biggest crisis with this COVID-19 is pneumonia, and especially in the elderly, which is terrible. But my father, when he was liberating the concentration camps there in Germany and Austria, he came upon just an array of sicknesses, from typhus, typhoid fever, yellow fever, malaria. These people were sick. These people were incredibly sick. I think one of the most famous, because we found her diary, Anne Frank. Anne died, and her sister, of typhus about 2 weeks before she was liberated at Bergen-Belsen there in Germany. So, to see these people in the conditions they were skeletons because obviously they were starved, but this brought on a breakdown of their immune system, and just they were susceptible to all kinds of diseases. The soldiers had to be careful. In fact, Bergen-Belsen was so bad that they basically bulldozed the place down and set it on fire. There's a lot of parallels. There's a lot of parallels.
Go to Yad Vashem and they show that big screen of the bulldozing of all these bodies.
Absolutely. One of the things too is that we have in today is that we're isolated. We're talking to each other through the internet. We're supposed to stay at home. Everybody stay at home. And the isolation, after a while, it's trying. There's no doubt about it. But you could imagine the isolationism and the abandonment that the prisoners of the Holocaust, what they had to go through. Immediately on selection at most of these camps, you're separated from your family immediately, and you're among strangers. A lot of folks, when the war was over, a lot of them went to Jerusalem, and a lot of them went to America, but they only went with half their family, if that much. So the isolation and the abandonment was absolutely terrible. There's another thing I was talking to my wife the other day about is, since we have to stay home, a lot of businesses are shutting down. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are worried, how will we pay our bills? And this brings on an extra amount of stress. There's no doubt. But it kind of reminds me, when the Jewish people were rounded up and taken to these camps, everything was taken from them. Even the clothes on their back was taken from them. From them. Helen's story, Helen Collin, the one we lost about 3 years ago now. When she came to America, though, she had $4 in her pocket, her and her husband. And they built a life. They absolutely built a life, and they persevered. And, we will too. We will persevere through this. We will get through this. Always still, have hope, trust in the Lord and pray. And I really believe that it'll get us through these hard times we're going through.
Hope in the basically in the face of losing everything is almost you're talking about right here.
It's true, but we also have, a lot of stories. Our faith in the Lord, if you give up everything, and that's hard to do. That's very hard to do. There's many examples in the Bible where people didn't because they couldn't see themselves as giving up everything. But there are times that happens, and you persevere. You push through it.
Yeah, my parents came here with nothing, but they had very successful businesses in Hungary, and they came here with absolutely nothing.
Right.
And they lost everything, family and finance. They came to a country that didn't speak the language. My mother didn't speak the language, father did, and was able to take his skills, his knowledge, and get creative. I find that right now there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are thinking of, witty ideas of if the world really is going in the direction of solely business from online or whatever. There's a chance for all kinds of great witty ideas and new creations from all of this, new ideas and witty ideas for new businesses.
Our teachers are having to learn to teach online, something that that's came about 10, 15 years ago, but they're solely online now, and it's trying. But what's amazing is that teachers are learning, and we're learning how to do this. I prefer being in front of my class, but you get by with what you have. You're talking about entrepreneurs. If you look back at World War II, how many companies started making tanks, started making airplanes? Westinghouse starts making tanks instead of washing machines. We're seeing that today when people are making hand sanitizers. I think it was a distillery there in Kentucky, whiskey. Now they're making hand sanitizers.
Masks.
People are making shields and masks. So yeah, we're starting to see that, and it's wonderful.
And also, we're going to probably have a lot more manufacturing happening in our own country because of all this.
I believe before it's all said and done, you're going to see a lot more made in America. There's no doubt about it. One thing that really disturbed me that I didn't know is that 90% of our antibiotics are made overseas. And that's something I don't think we really want to continue because we're starting to see the pressures of that.
A lot more jobs are going to be created from this. That's where the hope comes from. And medical breakthroughs.
Yeah.
With the new vaccine from all of this. And
we got accustomed to cheap products. Cheap products. Well, we're starting to see, the ramifications of that now. Not being able to have American-made products and have it on hand, and we're susceptible to the whims of other countries right now. But, yeah.
Und weißt du, ich war in Auschwitz und ich wurde dort durchgeführt.
I was in Auschwitz and I walked through this camp.
Und die Frau hat mir erzählt von Geschichten, dass wenn Mütter ihre Kinder weggenommen wurden, weil Mengele seine Versuche an ihnen gemacht hat.
During a tour in this camp, as we were walking through, the woman shared with us about Dr. Mengele, who was a Nazi doctor there who would take children away from their mothers to do experiments on them.
Und wenn sie nach Wochen ihre Kinder wieder gesehen haben,
And when the mothers saw their children again weeks later,
und sie sahen, wie entstellt sie waren.
and they saw how destroyed their children were.
Gestern waren wir zusammen im Holocaust-Museum hier in Houston.
Yesterday we went together to the Holocaust Museum here in Houston.
Und Mengele hat Kinder zum Teil einfach angebrannt.
Mengele just burned children sometimes.
Um zu sehen, wie die Haut reagiert.
Just to see how the skin would react.
So wir waren da und wir waren geschockt.
So we were there and horrified.
Und wenn Mütter dann ihre Kinder so wieder gesehen haben,
When mothers saw their children like this,
die sind in den Stacheldrahtzaun gerannt, den mein Opa aufgerichtet hat.
they ran at the electric barbed wire fence.
weil sie das nicht ausgehalten haben.
because they couldn't handle seeing their children.
Und mein Vater rief dann nochmal dieser Frau an.
And my father called this woman again.
Und er sagt, gibt es noch irgendwas, was ich wissen muss?
And he asked, is there something else that I need to know?
Und sie sagte, ja.
And she said, yes, there is.
Was du nicht weißt, ist, dass dein Vater auch die Leitungen für die Gaskammern gelegt hat.
You need to know that your father helped lay the pipelines for the gas chambers in Auschwitz.
Das heißt, mein Opa hat an der Plattform für den Tod von Hunderttausenden von Juden gearbeitet.
This means that my grandfather helped to create this platform for hundreds of thousands of Jews to die.
Und so, wir stehen heute hier.
So we're standing here today.
Mit Anna-Suzette war ich erst im Februar in Auschwitz.
With Anna-Suzette, I was just with her in Auschwitz this year in February.
Und wir sind durch die Gaskammern gelaufen.
And we walked through the gas chambers.
Und wir waren erschüttert über das zu sehen, woran ihr Urgroßvater und mein Opa gearbeitet haben.
And we were so shaken to see what my grandfather and her great-grandfather had worked to build.
Und wir stehen hier und wir möchten euch einfach von ganzem Herzen um Vergebung bitten.
And we're standing here today and we would like to ask you for forgiveness with all of our hearts.
Wo eure Familien nach Auschwitz gekommen sind.
If your families were sent to Auschwitz.
Oder ihr einfach allein durch die Deutschen terrorisiert und missbraucht und geschändet wurden, eure Familien weggenommen wurden.
Or if you have been terrorized or abused or experienced suffrage through the German people.
Und wir möchten euch von ganzem Herzen um Vergebung bitten.
We would like to ask you for forgiveness with all of our hearts.
Und vielleicht dürfen wir noch auf euch zukommen und euch kurz drücken, wenn ihr uns das erlaubt.
If it's okay for you, we would like to come and just put our arms around you, give you a hug, if that's okay.
Yes.
Hello, this is Consul General of Japan, Hideo Fukushima. Japan has been in the same boat with the Jewish and other people around the world in fighting against any kind of prejudice, racism, or abuse of human rights in any kind. So in this special occasion of a March of Remembrance, let me resonate with the lofty Jewish notion of Tikkun Olam. Thank you very much.
And we have Doug Stringer here, a good friend of March of Remembrance. And we're so glad that you're on the program.
It's great to be with you.
You know, I'd like to know you to share a little bit about what you do about rescuing lives and also with your ministry, and also just a few moments on why your organization and you care so much about March of Remembrance and see the importance.
Absolutely. As an American of Asian descent, in fact, I was born in Japan, it's especially important to me that we stand together globally for the land of Israel and for our brothers and sisters there. And especially, we just entered into the 72-year anniversary of independence of Israel. I think that as a Christian, I also believe it's important that we bless Israel, because the Bible is very clear that if we bless Israel, we shall be blessed. One of our key scriptures is Proverbs 14:25, which says, "A true witness rescues lives." And so that's a part of what we do. Somebody Cares America and Somebody Cares International, which I founded 39 years ago, is a coalition and network of ministries and organizations and churches that work inner cities and throughout the nation and around the world and doing humanitarian work, as well as part of compassion outreaches and training, etc., but also wanting to equip leaders globally. And I think part of equipping leaders globally is to get them to recognize the value and importance of standing with our brothers and sisters in Israel. And we must say never again, because the Holocaust is a reality. I know many times when there's pressure around the world, like the global pandemic or the virus of COVID-19, it's easy for people who are anti-Semitic to begin to say, well, it's the Jews' fault or it's Israel's fault. It seems like they're always looking for a scapegoat. And I think it's important for the rest of us to stand with Israel, stand for truth, and stand with those who rescue lives. And that means to come alongside in very practical ways as well. And that's why I'm so excited and have been a part for many, many years in supporting the March for Israel and also the Holocaust March, the March of Remembrance. I think it's so critical that we continue to do that, because it's an outward expression of our words. It's not just words, but when we are expressing it outwardly and marching together, serving together, it gives a clarion call to everyone else of the importance of also saying, not just in words, but enough is enough, never again, and we stand with Israel.
Thank you so much, Doug. God bless you.
Bless you.
Thanks for all that you've done and that you continue to do for us, and also promoting us to a lot of the churches and getting them to march with us.
Absolutely.
When we consider the impact of the Holocaust, one of the questions before us is, really, what is truth? It is true that the Holocaust represents in many ways a total loss of so many lives, a total loss of a sense of humanity, and a total loss of the future that could have been. But on the other hand, the Holocaust also represents some sense of hope. The fact is, there was life in the camps. People were married, babies were born. The truth is that there were righteous Gentiles who made certain that lives were saved that otherwise would have been lost. And it's also true that there were moments of resistance, both physical and spiritual, which were sustaining, even as so much of European Jewry was being destroyed. What is the truth? What is the truth of the Holocaust? And I submit to you that the truth of these acts of resistance, that these acts of kindness and of affirmation of life are just as true as the facts of death and destruction. Particularly at this time where there's so much focus on disease and death, let us also consider a real focus on the many acts of loving kindness which are taking place right now, and the courage of the physicians and other members of the medical community who are making life possible.
As we consider the Holocaust this year, let us consider the whole truth, the truth that sustains, as well as the truth that is so painful in our history.
Und dann, wenn ich mir die Nationen anschaue, je Nation,
And when I look to the nations, each nation treats the coronavirus and situation completely differently. They all have their different ways of dealing with it. And when I look to New York, for instance, I could just cry, or maybe to Italy. There is such tremendous suffering, such traumatization. You can't even begin to tell what it's going to be like. But I believe God is a God of hope and of a new beginning. But I can tell everyone, even if you've lost everything, if you've lost people you love, if you have no more hope, maybe you've even lost your job, and maybe as a pastor from Germany, I can tell you, if there is nothing left in your hand, you still have a God who loves you and who will fill your hands. And what you can do in very practical terms, the first step is seek for other believers, Christians who follow God and who have a living community or church. Secondly, exchange your religious garment for a true living relationship with a living God. Thirdly, study the holiness of God and take a look at your own life. Maybe you've lived your own lifestyle, but you didn't live according to God's commandments.
So I want to thank you so much for helping us dealing with issues of total loss, pretty much is what you just spoke about. And we just love you so much. And we're thankful for your heart for the Jewish people, for Israel, and for the world, and for your country, Germany.
Rosalie, thank you so much for this interview. And from Germany, I would like to express just how much we are blessed by America. America stood by our side right from the beginning when everything in Germany collapsed. And where everything else just crumbled to the ground, they stood by us to help. And when I was a very young pastor, it was American pastors who came and taught us how to believe and how to have faith, because we as Germans, we had no idea how to have faith. And so we want to bless you with this faith that is birthed out of the living word of God. We have been blessed through you. And we are so blessed also through the Jewish community and through you. And the Jewish community, Jewish life is the treasure in every nation. And I'm so grateful to know you and to be connected to you. God bless you.
Amen. Thank you so much. Shalom.
May God bless you and keep you in good health. May all of us enjoy a sense of God's nearness at this time. And may we all be blessed with peace.
We hope that your heart was touched and that you are stirred to raise your voice in these uncertain times. Partner with the Holocaust Remembrance Association in remembering the Holocaust, facilitating reconciliation and taking a stand. Visit www.hra18.org. If you would like to see March of Remembrance in your community or at your local university, call 1-888-546-8111. That's 1-888-546-8111. Plant your finances in this meaningful project. For details, see hra18.org. That's hra18.org for donations and sponsorships. hra18.org, sensitizing hearts to the issues of the Holocaust.
We stand together to stop anti-Semitism and
Lawhon.